Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just give us 1 second and we are going to get started here. Let's let some other people in the room, particularly our friends on X. All right. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Salatu wassalam ala Rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Welcome everybody from around the world. My name is Bilal Abdul Kareem, and this is the BAK Show, wherein we are here to discuss the things which are important to you, things that are important to the Muslim Ummah, the Muslims at large. Of course, I am your host, Bilal Abdul Kareem, and we are broadcasting live on X, and we're also broadcasting on YouTube, and we're happy to have everybody here. It's a good day. It's a new day. So let's get started on a few things here. Firstly, before we kind of officially begin, I want to give you some of my thoughts on Syrian President Ahmed Sharaa, formerly known as Abu Muhammad Jolani, and his visit to New York, my home state, as a matter of fact. I listened to a lot of what people have been saying, and in order for what I want to say to have some context, I think it's important that we look at how we got here. Abu Muhammad Jolani was a part of the resistance force that was in Iraq against the Americans, came up in the ranks with Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi's group that was in Iraq. Eventually, he became one of his trusted lieutenants and was sent to Syria after the uprising against Bashar al-Assad, and he ran a group called Jabhat al-Nusra. That group took on several different dimensions. It went from Jabhat al-Nusra to Jabhat al-Sham to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and ultimately Hayat Tahrir al-Sham dissolved and became the government of Syria with inclusions from a lot of different circles. Okay, that's how we got here. He had a $10 million bounty on his head as recently as December of last year. And that bounty was on his head for a number of years, I think maybe 10 years or maybe a little bit more. So that's where we are now. A lot of people have been saying that Abu Muhammad Jolani has arrived. He is in New York, going to speak at the United Nations General Assembly. For the first time, a Syrian president is going to be speaking at the General Assembly in many years. Bashar al-Assad was not invited. And he's meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and also a meeting scheduled with U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the UN general meeting. All right, after having said all of that, we're going to ask ourselves a couple of questions. Now, there are two ways we can approach a bit of commentary on this topic, either from a religious standpoint or from a completely dunya-oriented standpoint. Because from a religious standpoint, it encompasses both the dunya and the akhirah. From a dunya standpoint, it's only from the standpoint of the dunya. So let's start from the dunya standpoint, or the worldly aspect of it. And the reason why I'm basically separating the two is because some people are just not religious, and then they might just look at this thing just from a dunya standpoint. Okay, so let's try it like that. First of all, let me ask you guys a question. The U.S. administration, particularly under U.S. President Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and for years, They have been the biggest supporter of Israel. Israel would not be allowed to exist or would not exist if it wasn't for the United States of America. I don't think anybody would dispute that. Okay. Therefore, even on the world stage, where every country around the world is calling for a ceasefire, but the only one, and nobody even abstained in the most recent vote, it was only America who vetoed it. Okay. Therefore, we could really look at the Israeli American relationship a lot like mother and daughter, father and son, who's the father, who's the son, who's the mother, who's the daughter, story of another day. But we have to look at them as this entity wherein they take care of one another. So, after having said that, there's no way that we could look that the United States of America would carry out any type of foreign policy except with Israeli considerations being prevalent in those meetings that led up to whatever decisions that they take. I think we can also agree on that. I think we can. Okay. And after having said all of that, I would ask you all a question. The people in Syria are Muslims, yes or no? The answer to that question, resoundingly has to be absolutely positively yes. Second question, are Muslims happy with what's happening in Gaza? Yes or no? The question would have to be absolutely positively not. They're not happy. Okay. Next question. Do the Muslims know who's enabling the mass slaughter and destruction of their brothers and sisters here in Sham, in Gaza to be exact, and also in the West Bank now? Do Muslims not know that it's America bankrolling and giving arms and weapons and political cover? Do the Muslims know that, or they don't know that? Of course, everybody would have to say absolutely positively. Everybody knows that. Okay. So then I would ask some pertinent questions. Number one, is there any way that you could imagine that the U.S. administration would do anything to strengthen a country full of Muslims on the borders of Israel and strengthen them economically? Because if you strengthen them economically, they're going to strengthen themselves militarily. Could you imagine that? Do you think that the U.S. administration doesn't know that Syrians hate Israelis? Do they understand that? Or do you think that they're not clear whether they actually hate the Israelis or not? What would you say? Of course, everybody would say, of course they'd be clear on that. So then how would you think that the Americans would do anything to strengthen the Syrians? By pure logic, we're not talking about the Islamic aspect of it, but pure logic, you would have to conclude that the decisions that the U.S. makes are not in the interest of the Syrian people, are not in the interest of the Syrian people, are not in the interest of the Syrian people. Now, if we even look at the Okobat or the sanctions, the sanctions haven't been completely lifted, brothers and sisters. It hasn't. That's one of the things that Ahmed Sharaa has been very vocal about, that he wants to address when he meets with U.S. officials. Now, Congress, Donald Trump has raised the sanctions. In other words, every 180 days, they have to go back and get the waivers for those sanctions renewed. But part of that renewal is the relationship that Israel and Syria have. Is this clear? In other words, there's no way that the US administration is going to totally release the constraints on Ahmed al-Sharaa's government in any way, shape, form, or fashion, except that they have guarantees that they're going to be cool to Israel. How could any Syrian president give that guarantee? He couldn't. The hatred that Syrians have for the Israelis. I'm not coming up here talking about the hatred they have for Jews and all that. I know I'm choosing my words carefully here, and I'm saying exactly what I want to say. Hatred for Israelis because Israelis, whether they are Jews or not, they are occupiers. They are contributing to a regime that is carrying out a genocide. The last genocide that I can remember that we had was in Rwanda. But the numbers, forget about that 66,000. Look at Gaza, guys. You can tell it's much more than 66,000 people were killed. There are numbers now, which is saying it's more like 680,000. And I would tell you that that's probably a lot closer to what it actually is, because we're talking about a total destruction of the Gaza Strip. So I'm saying to you, there's no way that even Ahmed al-Sharaa could give a guarantee that Syria is going to play nice with Israel. I don't know if Ahmed al-Sharaa can even rein these people in indefinitely. But then what would he have to be prepared to do to face the backlash of his own people? Now, a lot of people are saying, well, if you look at what's happening, he must be important because he's meeting with all of these dignitaries and U.S. officials. Well, the first thing that I would look at that is that, oh, he's definitely important because he's on Israel's border. If he wasn't on Israel's border, it would be a different tune. So we have to make sure that we understand that. The second thing we have to also understand is that the lifting of his status as a quote unquote terrorist, and I want everybody to understand, I never thought Abu Muhammad Jolani was a terrorist. Of course, I differ with him on many affairs, but I never saw him as a terrorist. Would they have lifted it if it wasn't for their benefit? Of course not. So we have to be very skeptical of everything that the Americans are doing, because they do what they do for the benefit of Tel Aviv first and foremost, and then America. Because remember, America's a long way away, many kilometers away from Syria and Israel. But Israel is right across the border. You can walk there from Syrian territory. You get shot, but I'm talking about distance-wise. So everybody, when I see Ahmed al-Sharaa in America, and I see all of these Syrians looking and saying how, oh, we've arrived and so on and so forth, and yay, and it's a new day and such like that. I have to tell you what I feel. Now we're going into the religious side of this thing. You are dealing with the Firaun of our time, with Donald Trump. He hates Muslims. The first thing that he did in his former administration was to put a ban on Muslims coming into America from Muslim majority countries, and it was a long list of countries and coming into America. He hates Muslims, and he doesn't try to hide it. This administration, he continues to arm and bankroll and talking about that they're going to that Gaza is just a great piece of real estate. That's Donald Trump. We haven't arrived anywhere because Ahmed al-Sharaa sits with him. Donald Trump is one of the worst people that you would ever know. We from New York, we know him. We know him better than the world knows him because we've known him all his life. This is one of the most egotistical and evil people that you would come across. He has no moral compass. Okay, now you're going to sit there and say, come on, Bilal, going religious on us and all. Look, man, look, the people got to eat. The people have got to benefit. The people got to move forward. And you got to deal with America. All right, well, let's talk about a few things. Number one, the Taliban are not dealing with America. Taliban, they are moving forward with their country. They're doing a trade in their own local currency, not even in dollars. They have major projects like building dams to the tune of billions of dollars, building roads that would connect the entire country with each other, because it's a very rural-oriented country. Building roads that cost billions of dollars. They're moving forward. People, you got to understand, it's not a given that if you don't deal with America, then you're off the world stage. Why are we selling this idea to ourselves? It's not real. It's false. It's I forget what it's called, fear. False emotions appearing real. Fear. False emotions appearing real. So even the U.S. President Donald Trump says, okay, well, we built the Bagram Air Base and we want it back. We're going to take it back and all. Did the Taliban say, well, how come you don't send a delegation to negotiate? Did they say that? How come the Taliban didn't say, well, look, all you had to do was ask nicely. Oh, by the way, can you lift some sanctions in return for it? They said that if you try to take this base back, we'll fight you for another 20 years. That's the type of talk that will help Muslim countries be successful. Brothers and sisters, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to try to play the game. I'm not going to try to play the role. I'm not looking just for likes and such like that and everything. I just got to be real with you. The way that Muslim countries are approaching our affairs is an abysmal shame, and we're not benefiting from it. Just look at the Qataris. The Qataris, the Americans told them to host the Hamas. They said, okay. And then they said, oh, we're not happy with Hamas. The Qataris told Hamas, okay, guys, y'all need to go. Then the Americans said, call them back because we want to have more negotiations. They told the Hamas, come on back, guys. And then they made an attempt on their lives when they were trying to kill them just a few weeks ago using U.S. equipment. And the U.S. military base, Odeid, is right there in Qatar, and ain't nobody saw nothing, no how. I don't understand how that could have happened. Odeid base is there to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen. And then missiles just come and slam right into Doha. And then what's the biggest thing that came out of it? We condemn. We don't think that what happened was nice. They shouldn't do that again. That's it. That's a guarantee that mafia-oriented Benjamin Netanyahu is going to come back again. He's going to do it again because you didn't do anything. That's real. So when we see Ahmed Sharaa going to America, going to New York, meeting with U.S. officials, I don't expect anything positive to come from those meetings. Why? Because the Americans will not allow it. Syrians, wake up. America is your enemy. Because you're on Syria's borders, the Americans have to keep the Syrians weak, divided, and fighting amongst themselves. They can't have it any other way, or else if the Syrians got any strength at all, the first ones they'll come after are the Israelis. And don't let anybody tell you any different. Ahmed Sharaa would never be able to rein in the people who fought a jihad for 14 years. 14 years they fought a jihad. If they got any strength, do you really think he would have the ability to rein them in? Whatever deals he's making over there in Washington, I'm going to tell you, the brothers who are part of the military and the intelligence structure, a lot of them have a moral compass. A lot of them still understand that the Israelis are their chief enemy. I didn't say the Jews. I said the Israelis, because not all Jews are inherently against Muslims. but the Israelis are. Because they're occupiers. They're occupying other people's land. They know eventually that the owners of the land or their brothers and sisters are going to come calling. They understand that. They know that. That's why they work so hard to keep the brothers and sisters weak and divided. All right, guys, let's see what we've got here. Let's take a look. I'm sorry if I might have gone a little bit over time, but let's take a look and see. All right, now we've got Skipper Dipper, who's here. He's on X. Secretary Marco Rubio says, I met with Syrian President Ahmed Sharaa about our shared goals for a stable and sovereign Syria and ongoing efforts to bring security and prosperity to all Syrians. We also discussed implementing President Trump's historic announcement on sanctions relief and the importance of Israel-Syria relations. Okay, that was Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Skipper Dipper says he's a rat. I think he's referring to Ahmed Sharaa. That's how any sincere Muslim should understand him. Okay, look, I understand your sentiment. I probably wouldn't frame it like that, but I can dig what you're saying. And I think that the way we have to look at that is as follows. Let's go back to that. First of all, let's look at what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said. Okay, he said, I met with Syrian President Ahmed Sharaa about our shared goals for a stable and sovereign Syria and ongoing efforts to bring security and prosperity to all Syrians. Number one, in the south of the country, in Quneitra, it's run, a big portion of it is under the influence of the Israeli Defense Force. Okay, where did the weapons come from the that are in the hands of those occupiers in Quneitra? Where did the weapons come from? America. So don't talk to me about a stable and sovereign Syria, because it's your weapons and it's your cash that's allowing the Israelis to occupy Syria and to carry out askari missions. Askari, I'm forgetting my English here. Military operations in Syria. It's your weapons doing it, and it's your political cover doing it. And you say to bring security and prosperity to all Syrians. All Syrians? You sure about that? You can't separate what the Israelis are doing in the southern part of the country, which is called Suedat, where in Hikmat al-Hajri is Tel Aviv's man in Syria, where it's outside of the control of Damascus government headed by Ahmed Sharaa. And you can't say that the Israeli flag that Hajri raises there inside of Suedat, we got no connection to that. We don't know what's going on out there. You know what's going on out there, and you know that it's your money that is bankrolling not only Tel Aviv, but their proxy here in Syria. So don't fall for that, brothers and sisters. That's the first thing. He also said, we also discussed implementing President Trump's historic announcement on sanctions relief and the importance of Israel-Syria relations. Bam! That's just what I just got finished saying. I said that the sanctions relief is based upon Israel-Syria relations. And hear how he just said it. Historic announcement on sanctions relief and the importance of Israel-Syria relations. Okay, so in other words, if you ain't going to be cool with Syria, the sanctions are not going to get raised. Everybody knows that. So I'm just making it crystal clear, brothers and sisters, who's who and what's what, and who should be getting excited about meeting U.S. officials, because you got to understand something. Ahmed Sharaa is not in a position of strength. He's not. I'm not sure what his positions might be if he was in a position of strength. But on the real to real, don't expect that he's going to come back and they're going to be a bag full of goodies for the Muslims in Syria. Forget it. I just don't see if that's going to happen. and Allah knows best. All righty, let's take a look and see. All right. Okay, Ozzy says, Assalamu alaikum, brother. Al-Jawlani is a typical example of what is called Islamic politics. I'm going to say a typical example of failed politics, because the way the affairs are being, I'm seeing them, this is not Islamic politics. It's not. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, oh, what are you saying, Bilal? He shouldn't sit with them or something like that. No, you can sit with anybody. I didn't see a problem if the revolutionary forces sat with Bashar al-Assad. That doesn't mean we're going to agree. But when we're seeing things here in the country, like the attempt that they made to scale back the amount of periods in the school system that Islamic studies is happening. In other words, there were 4 periods in the free territories. Now that the country's been taken over by revolutionary forces, they scaled it back to 2. But there was a big backlash, and then it got reinstated up to 4. But what did they reintroduce? They introduced music and art. Okay, all right, I don't have a problem with art, but music is haram. It was Jolani's position that music was haram all these years. When did it stop being haram? You see what I'm saying? Now you got some new fatwa? Well, how come you don't tell us what the fatwa is if something is new? But don't just hook up with the Americans and then all of a sudden now Islam is getting scaled back and music is being put put forward, and a lot of other stuff that's going on. So I wouldn't call it Islamic politics. I wouldn't. I can't, because I don't see the Islamic part of it in it. Okay, next item up for bids. The Lion Amir says, Nasserism, aka Arab nationalism, secularism, refuses to die, and now they're building another Sisi-style surveillance state in Syria. You brothers and sisters have heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again. If you do what others did, you're going to get what others got. If you do what others did, you're going to get what others got. Brothers and sisters, the politics of these nationalist-oriented states are failures. Failure. They haven't gotten anything out of it. I'm just being real with you, brothers and sisters. Let's talk business. We don't have sovereignty in any of our countries. Look at all of the Arab lands. Look at them. In spite of the fact that they've got trillions of dollars, we don't have a single powerful military. Bam, I just said it. Which one? Oh, Egypt is the biggest, is the powerful military. Yeah, they started to transition and to buy stuff from China, but the other military equipment that they buy from the United States of America and all, they couldn't even use it in a conflict against the Israelis because of the end user agreements. They'll mess around and turn them F-16s off. I'm not kidding. I didn't just make that up. You can take an F-16 and you can lock out portions of the computer. Even the missile systems, the end user agreements is that you can't use it against an ally of the United States of America. That's their equipment. They wouldn't even sell it to you without these end user agreements. And somebody might say, okay, well, once you got the stuff, you can just go ahead and do your thing. No, you can't do your thing because these planes and advanced weapon systems need parts. They need ammunition. They need all of these things to keep it going. And when all of a sudden you've got these advanced planes with the computer locked out and the fuselage is not working and this is not working and you don't have the parts to be able to replace it, then you've got billions of dollars worth of junk. That's where we are, brothers and sisters, and that's real. So as long as they want to keep on doing this failed diplomacy and all, well, we're going to get what we've always been getting, which is a bunch of nothing. Ozzy is back and he says, brother, you're a real Muslim, speaks with no fear or double standards. May Allah protect you and your family. Ameen. Listen, I'll be real with you. I don't want anybody to think that I don't think that there will be at some point repercussions for some of the things that I'm saying. But I also understand something, that at 54 and years of being in the field of journalism, I know things and see things that other people don't. It would be haram for me to take these abilities that Allah gave to me and to keep it close, and I'd be the only one, just those people in my own personal circle who know certain things that are important to the Muslims at large. That would be a betrayal of the ummah. Now, eventually I might go downstairs to go get in my car. Somebody might throw a rock and pop me upside the head with it. Or somebody might want to put one of those bombs that they like underneath the car, something like that. Yeah, all of that is a possibility, but shoot, I'm going to do my thing anyway. What can, I have to explain to Allah why I didn't do it. What am I going to say? I was scared. I was concerned that certain forces were going to do something. I can't be worried about that. I'm not going to tell you that I'm not worried about it. I can't be worried about that because we got work to do. We have an ummah to build, and we may as well roll up our sleeves and just get to work. Next, Ahmed says, do you think Saudi and Pakistan defense deal has anything related to Israel? I think for the Saudis, there's a part of that in there, but I think it's directed more maybe towards Muslims, i.e. the Houthis on their borders, and maybe I think it's both. Because, yeah, I think that what Netanyahu's been doing is worrisome. And it's clear that America cannot, will not protect them. So therefore, they need to do some things that will help to boost their protection. And that's where the Pakistanis come in. As for the Pakistanis, they ain't got no money. The Saudis got some money. So that's what their interest is for them. So it's a bit of a symbiotic relationship. I do think that the Israeli thing is also a part of it, but I don't think it's the whole story. And Allah knows best. Okay, Eagle 6 says, the U.S. did support Egypt and Jordan. The U.S., the biggest recipients of U.S. financial aid and assistance in the world, the top three are first, Israel, second, Egypt, the third, Jordan. Jordan is a little dried up country that's very, very small. And I use the word dried up country because of their failed leadership and not because of the Jordanian people, who I think are some very, very good people. They got a lot of people of knowledge that come out of there. But why would they give so much money to the Jordanians? Well, why do you think that they do that? Protection for Israel. When you buy the government and all, you buy protection for Israel. Pay to play. That's the reality of it. So when we use the word support Egypt and Jordan, you have to understand something. America isn't supporting anybody because they're their friends. There's no friendship here. There's only interests. And their interest is to protect Israel. And Allah knows best. Let's take one more. All right, we're going to take two. And this is the last two. All right. Sunstar Bobby says, Assalamu alaikum. Bilal Love from Australia, the worldwide recognition of Palestine. You think it's PSYOP and Israel is playing 4D chess on the Palestinians and especially on Hamas by pressuring them. All right. Now you've got the French, the Australians, the British, the Belgians, and there are others, but we're going to focus on the French, the Australians, and the British. They recognize a Palestinian state, but they all say Hamas can have no role in the future governance of the country. The first thing is that whatever happened to sovereignty? What about sovereignty? Who governs the country? Yo, dude, that ain't your business. That's the business of the people of Palestine, not you. I can't sit here and say, all right, well, you know what? But such and such leader will have no future in governance of the country. That's for the people of that country to decide, number one. Number two, not a single one of those countries, UK, Australia, France, not one of them has recalled their ambassador, the Israeli ambassador. Should have expelled the Israeli ambassador to their country or recalled their ambassador from Israel. Dude, that's the least you can do. Three, the Brits are still running recon surveillance operations, passing intel to the Israelis, even as we speak. They have not cut off military sale relations. They're still selling arms. I will tell you why they did this. They did this because the anger is growing and the people are getting out of control. So they had to do something to release the pressure valve. So as opposed to having millions of people in their streets, which is a big problem, what they had to do was to throw them a bone. Yes, we recognize the state of Palestine, but we're also still selling weapons to them. Shh, don't tell anybody. That's real. That's what's going on, brothers and sisters. So don't fall for it. Okay? It's symbolic. And when you're getting your butt kicked in the street, you don't need, it's like if I'm getting beat up by 5 guys in the street, they got bats and chains and rocks, and they're in a crowd gathers of 10, 15, and 20 people, and they start saying, be loud, be loud, be what, be loud. And one of them holds up a sign that says, Bilal is cool. That's all symbolic. Put the sign down and come in and help me. Or better yet, use the sign and crack one of them over the head. We don't need symbolism right now, brothers and sisters. There's a genocide going on. We need real action, and they're not providing it. And on the real to real, that's the real deal. Last question. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam barakatuh. Bilal Abdul Kareem. When talking to Syrian friends, they tell me that President Sharaa is trying to buy time to build a strong Islamic army in the background. What do you think? False, fake, no reason to believe that. I want to believe it. I really do. But that thinking is based upon what tangible things are they seeing on the ground. That's the key. Please, guys, you know, I'm not saying you, but, you know, we can't be romantic and nostalgic. Oh, he must have a plan. You know, okay, well, we need to see something of that plan because we want to be in on the plan too. We want to help out. We'll throw in. We will support you, Ahmed Sharaa. But so far, what we've seen are nothing but concessions and things that go against the very nature of this revolution. Ahmed Sharaa is doing military operations with the U.S. military killing Muslims inside of Syria. And I'm supposed to think that somehow, some way, someday, there's going to be some kind of Islamic army that's going to be born out of that debacle and chaos? Nah. I'd be fooling you if I said that. I'd be maybe have an agenda if I said I have some reason to believe that. I don't have a reason to believe that. Wallahi, I wish I did. I wish I did. But I don't. And that's the real deal. Okay, brothers and sisters, we're going to break off here. Look, I want everybody to check out our crowdfunding page. That's on Medina.com/voices of truth. Medina.com/voices of truth. For those of you who are on X, that's Medina, MADINAH.com/VOICESOFTRUTH. Voices of Truth. I am your host, Bilal Abdul Kareem. Jazakumullah khair. Please do share this video and we'll catch up with you next round, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.